I want to just turn, though, and you'll have to forgive me, listening to the testimony has changed my line of questioning a bit, because this is very personal to me. I sit here right now because when good white people in this country heard bigotry or hatred, they stood up. Moving into my home community, we were denied housing because of the color of our skin. And there was white Americans from Bergen County who banded together to fight against racism, to fight against hate speech, to fight against people who had broad brush generalities about people based upon their ethnicity, based upon their origin, based upon their religion. What went on in the White House, what went on in the Oval Office, is profoundly disturbing to me. And I'll tell you this, I heard about it when I was in Puerto Rico, when it happened. And here I was there trying to help a community dealing with savage challenges. And I can't tell you how many Puerto Ricans brought up that conversation in the White House. I returned to Atlanta to go to the King Center Awards, and from the greatest luminaries from the Civil Rights Movement down to average Americans, this was on their mind. I returned to Newark, New Jersey, and I talked to African Americans from Africa. I talked to Central American Americans. I talked to regular Newarkers, and this was top on their mind. Yesterday, I talked to the ambassador from Haiti, and to see all that they're doing as a result of this conversation. Now, I've been in the Oval Office many times, and when the commander-in-chief speaks, I listened. I don't have amnesia on conversations I had in the Oval Office going back months and months and months. And I've had individual meetings with the president, and I've had group conversations where there was, as you said, crosstalk. And why is this so important? Why is this so disturbing for me? Why am I, frankly, seething with anger? We have this incredible nation where we have been taught that it does not matter where you're from, it doesn't matter your color, your race, or religion, it's about the content of your character. It's about your values and your ideals. And yet we have a language that from Dick Durbin to Lindsey Graham, they seem to have a much better recollection of what went on. You're under oath. You and others in that room that suddenly cannot remember. It was Martin Luther King that said, there's nothing in this world more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And so here we are in the United States of America. And we have a history that is beautiful and grand and also ugly, where from this nation to others, we know what happens when people sit by and are bystanders and say nothing. When Oval Office rhetoric sounds like social engineering, we know from human history the dangers of that. Our greatest heroes in this country spoke out about people who have convenient amnesia or who are bystanders. King said, a man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand. Elie Wiesel says, we must take side. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages a tormentor, never the tormented. Gandhi said, silence becomes cowardice. Cowardice when the occasion demands speaking out like Lindsey Graham did and acting accordingly. This idea that the commander-in-chief of this country could, with broad brushes, talk about certain nations and thus cast a shadow over the millions of Americans who are from those communities. And that you could even say in your testimony the Norwegians were preferenced by him because they're so hardworking.
I didn't.
Excuse me, let me finish.
Happy to.
Let me just draw a connection of why that matters. I'm sure you remember the 6 words from our president, the 6 words that he said after Charleston, Virginia last summer. People marching with tiki torches and hate, when he said there are very fine people on both sides. very fine people on both sides. When the commander-in-chief speaks or refuses to speak, those words just don't dissipate like mist in the air. They fester. They become poison. They give license to bigotry and hate in our country. I know you're aware of a 2017 GAO report that found, and I quote, out of the 85 violent extremist incidences that resulted in death since September 12, 2001, far right-wing violent extremist groups were responsible for 73%. When I go through the Black Belt in the South, when I'm in Atlanta, black churches in Newark, they're concerned about jihadist Islamic terrorism. We watched the Twin Towers from Newark go down. But since 9/11, 85 violent incidents, 73% were with people that hold bigoted, hateful ideas about minorities. 1 American killed in Charleston, Virginia, and dozens injured. 9 Americans killed in a church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina by a white supremacist. An American killed and another wounded in Kansas after a white supremacist targeted them for their ethnicity, saying, "Get out of my country." 6 Americans killed and 4 others wounded in Wisconsin, where white supremacists targeted individuals for their religion. The commander-in-chief, in an Oval Office meeting, referring to people from African countries and Haitians with the most vile and vulgar language. The language festers. When ignorance and bigotry is allied with power, it is a dangerous force in our country. Your silence and your amnesia is complicity. Right now in our nation, we have a problem. I don't know if 73% of your time is spent on white supremacist hate groups. I don't know if 73% of your time is spent concerned about the people in fear in communities in this country, Sikh Americans, Muslim Americans, Black Americans. The fact pattern is clear of the threats in this country. I hurt. When Dick Durbin called me, I had tears of rage when I heard about his experience in that meeting. And for you not to feel that hurt and that pain and to dismiss some of the questions of my colleagues, saying I've already answered that line of questions when tens of millions of Americans are hurting right now because of what they're worried about what happened in the White House. That's unacceptable to me. There are threats in this country. People plotting. I receive enough death threats to know the reality. Kamala receives enough death threats to know the reality. Maisie receives enough death threats to know the reality. And I've got a president of the United States whose office I respect, who talks about the countries of origins of my fellow citizens in the most despicable of manner. You don't remember. You can't remember the words of your commander-in-chief. I find that unacceptable. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful to be on this committee. I'm more than ever today happy I am here. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Graham.